There's been a pretty big flow of superhero films over the years, and in the process, we've had some great products. The Avengers, Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Civil War, Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, X-Men Days of Future Past. Even with some duds here and there, superhero films are in a much better place these days. And to show you just how much better a place, we decided to look back on some of the worst superhero films ever made. Superman 4: Quest for Peace. Originally, the Christopher Reeve starring Superman films were a thing to admire. With Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, well, this all went out the window. Pathetic special effects, an awful story, even worse editing, and budget cuts were enough to effectively kill off the franchise's viability in films for a while. Fantastic Four. All of them. Speaking of killing off a franchise's viability in films, how in the world do Fantastic Four movies keep getting made? The first was a below-average derivative offshoot of the story that was more boring than anything else. The second, Rise of the Silver Surfer, was equally boring but somehow lamer. The reboot was downright awful, and yet there are rumors of Fantastic Four coming back again. Just stop already. Spider-Man 3. When you talk about a film taking liberties with an established character, Spider-Man 3 is often brought up. It's not just Peter Parker dancing on tables or wearing emo makeup that gets to us. Spider-Man 3 was actually pretty nonsensical as a whole. The promised inner conflict between Parker and the symbiote lasted all of one scene. Harry Osborn lost his memory and then got his memory back and hated Peter Parker and then liked Peter Parker. The Sandman was forgiven for killing Uncle Ben, just... what? Steel. The world needs a hero, but unfortunately only Shaquille O'Neal was available. The character of Steel is actually DC Comics related and isn't all that bad. The problem is, the film adaptation turned him into little more than a caricature whose one saving grace is a giant hammer. Sorry Shaq, but we far prefer the schlock of Shaq Fu over this. X-Men: The Last Stand. And here's an X-Men film so goddamn terrible they actually retconned the entire X-Men storyline with Days of Future Past to get rid of it. The Last Stand featured a number of terrible ideas. Numerous mutants were thrown in with no rhyme or reason, Professor X and Cyclops were killed off, the Juggernaut was somehow turned into a comical goof, and Halle Berry led the X-Men. Really, nothing went right here. Catwoman. As for nothing going right in Halle Berry, we had this twisted version of the Catwoman lore. You would think seeing Berry in such an outlandish outfit would be titillating, but with this story, it came off as amateurish and outright lame. Also, the basketball scene. The movie itself was bad, but the basketball scene is the nail in the coffin. The Spirit. Despite his chops as a comic book writer, Frank Miller proved with The Spirit that he's not necessarily the best director. The Spirit used the same monochromatic effects that made 300 stand out, but forgot everything else that was good in the process, including a good story, likable characters, and any logic or sense whatsoever. At least Samuel L. Jackson looked like he had fun, even if he dressed up as a Nazi at one point, and no, that's not a joke. Jonah Hex. Jonah Hex is a Western bounty hunter with ties to the supernatural and played by Josh Brolin. Sounds pretty cool in theory, right? Unfortunately, long production times and some truly terrible acting, especially by co-star Megan Fox, turned this into yet another lame DC Comics film adaptation that can't keep its own story straight. Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance. Did you think that the initial adaptation of Nicolas Cage as Ghost Rider was embarrassing? Well, why not throw in the directors of Crank and Crank High Voltage to make it worse, we suppose. Ghost Rider: The Spirit of Vengeance was something. We still haven't figured out what that thing is, but it was certainly nothing good. Batman and Robin. If Superman 4 killed interest in Superman films, then Batman and Robin nuked the Batman film franchise from orbit. Costume changes, Bat credit cards, Freeze puns by Mr. Freeze played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, molded nipples on the Batsuit, it's almost enough to make you wonder how anyone convinced Hollywood to make yet another Batman film after this. Green Lantern. Just when you thought superhero films couldn't get any worse, we get the Green Lantern. Ryan Reynolds' starring role as Hal Jordan was littered with the most laughable CG we'd ever seen, including the disgusting green suit Reynolds wore, along with a terrible story and characters. Thank the Lord he's Marvel's Deadpool now. What is your pick for the worst superhero movie of all time? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.